Hello, everybody, and welcome to a little podcast, first impressions, reaction sort of thing. This is part of a series of videos I'm doing for Christmas video gift request. This one's for my mom. It is to basically do a video response to Boys Over Flowers. And I just decided to do the first episode for time constraints. I've basically been watching something and then recording something the day of. So video every day for 12 days has been quite a challenge. Boys Over Flowers is a 2009 TV series that it's a Korean series. I guess a K-drama is a term for it, and it is an adaptation of a manga, which I had seen a picture of the manga, and I was like, okay, this sounded vaguely familiar. And the setup for it seems very similar to some manga anime that I'm familiar with or seen. These typical sort of plots aren't really my thing, but I'm familiar enough with it. Basically, there's this young girl. She's working class. She works a lot. She seems like she has a couple jobs, primarily working with her family's laundromat business, working primarily for her dad. And there's this school, this super elite school of this really elite school that's run by this company that is pretty much the biggest company in the country, runs everything. So it is the school, I think they say at the beginning of the episode, it's like the private school for the 1%, made for the 1%, for the 1%. But the most intriguing thing, it kind of reminded me, I don't think it's quite the same level, but the introduction was the thing that probably pulled me in the most, because this girl ends up having to go to the school. But what sort of prompts it is she's sending one of her deliveries. She's taking it to one of the students who goes there right as he's being bullied, because for whatever reason he's gone up against the F4. They're like the elite, most popular kids, 4 boys in the school, but they're also basically related to the richest, most powerful people, primarily the main kid who's basically he's like the son or whatever of the head of the company. So he's got to inherit the fortune. So basically, these kids can do whatever they want. And she goes and delivers laundry to this one kid who's basically being attacked by them. This kid opens up his locker and he gets this little red tag that says, you've been marked. And you'd think that like the bullies would come after him specifically, but the thing is, the school is such a really kind of questionable place where most of the people are kind of out for themselves, and really everybody is trying to look up to the F4. And because they have so much power, they don't even wear the same uniforms everybody else does. They basically come and go as they want, although it seems like a lot of people in the school kind of do too, which is one of the little logic things I kind of wanted to point out. But basically, yeah, this kid is being assaulted by everybody because everybody is kowtowing so much to these 4 kids that basically everybody in the school, or at least a good chunk of them, are able to bully this kid. But it goes beyond just bullying. Like, they chase him around the school. They fight him. There's like literally over a dozen guys that get into a fight with him, and he's covered in blood. They're serious. They were assaulting this kid and practically kill him, trying to say, okay, we're going to literally run you out of school. And he goes up onto the roof and he says, well, you want me to leave? He's basically been pushed to the brink, a mental breakdown, understandably, and he's going to kill himself, jump from the roof. And our main character is like delivering laundry to this kid. So it seems kind of funny. And she, at first, because she's talking to him like, oh, what's going on? Because she's kind of almost a little aloof, kind of absent-minded, because she's up on the roof and there's all these people, like 15, 20 kids that are threatening this other guy. And she doesn't really care about them being there, even though she's saying, why are you letting them pick on you? Like, I think she should be afraid, but she's just completely out of her depth here. No idea what's going on. But unfortunately, that kid jumped and killed himself, or at least got seriously injured, that was kind of it reminded me a little bit of what I was going to say earlier, the film Old Boy, which is one of my favorite movies, which is also a South Korean film. I think that is obviously much more dramatic and much more serious. This is kind of more fantastical and over the top and, kind of cartoony in some ways, which makes sense because I think a lot of K-dramas are kind of like that. And if it's based on a manga, a lot of it did feel kind of like your, typical anime series where there's a lot of logical things you throw out of the window for the sake of the drama. Everything's so heightened. So, I mean, there was that. And that hook of being on somebody being on the roof and their life being in danger was a really big hook that reminded me of the opening scene of Old Boy, which I think is one of the great opening scenes. Obviously done very differently, but I did kind of enjoy that. That pulled me in. But it showed the contrasting tone, which is sometimes a little jarring of you've got this kind of kooky, silly girl who's a bit out of it compared to everybody else, and this kid that's being pushed to the brink. But the thing is, I guess this school is really closed off, and the social media gets a hold. There's a lot of people taking pictures, talking on their phones, and you're seeing people on the internet and news sites basically saying, oh, there's a lot of controversy now about the extent of bullying going on in this school. We're going to actually start protesting other things this company is doing. So it affects the school and it affects the company's other interests, their stocks and whatnot. So the head of the company says, well, what can we do for publicity? Let's get this girl, kind of the every woman, every person, every man, so to speak, girl in to show that, because she's a working class girl, that we don't care just about, the elite, and it's not that exclusive, and we'll let her in. Although that's kind of the extent of the plan in the first episode, because she comes in, even though she doesn't really want to, understandably, because it seems like a horrible place in general, because bullying is a problem. But in this school, it's like the point where there's all the kids kind of run rampant, and there theoretically are classes, but we never see anything. And being a teacher, it's one of those things that was very hard to ignore. I guess I feel like this is a piece that is primarily focused on young kids. I don't in high school, maybe younger, where like you're just so caught up in the lives of the students. But I mean, even I was thinking about comparing it to the situations to a certain extent, like the fighting and the mass bullying can happen in American movies and Western movies, but usually there's like, a fallout where, a principal or a teacher does come by towards the end of the scene, or maybe they're nearby, you know what I mean? But nobody ever shows up the entire episode. So I'm like, there's no sense of structure or anybody being held accountable. So that was a little hard to believe. They just like if they just had somebody there, or like a scene with them actually learning something in a classroom, that would have helped a little bit, because it's so focused on the fantasy. But anyway, she doesn't want to go, but her family wants her to go because getting into the super elite school could be a great chance for her future, just the education, and also she, I guess, didn't have an opportunity to swim at her school, so I guess she could join the swim team. She was a good swimmer, so at this school she might be able to have that opportunity. And her mom makes kind of the very old-fashioned statement of, ooh, if you go there, you can meet some rich guy, and you can marry him, and your future will be taken care of. So there's a couple of different ways she could potentially achieve success, I guess. But she doesn't really want to go. Her parents basically force her to go, which is weird, because I'm like, I kind of get that, but, and I admit that this school's reputation wasn't that well known until the big social media bubble that she caused. But the knowledge of like, there are massive crowds of bullies. The entire school, most of the school at least, will turn against you if these couple students don't like you. And they almost killed this guy, or killed him. I wouldn't want my kid to go there, even if it was a rich, prestigious school, because it just seems way too dangerous. But whatever, the plot has to happen, so they go. And she doesn't fit in well. But the nice thing about this character, the young girl, our main character, she's kind of one of the best. She's probably one of the best aspects of the show, because the nice thing about her is she doesn't really. I mean, she's not perfect. She doesn't say exactly everything that comes into her head, and she fantasizes about kicking these guys' butts. But she, sees other people being bullied, and she does kind of say something. She does stand up to them. And this, of course, gets the attention of the main guy who, obviously has never had anybody stand up to him. So he's intrigued by her, I'm guessing, is where the story goes. But he's still kind of terrible. He does all these terrible things. The F4 guys, well, I mean, they're just not great. And I mean, there's sort of this weird thing. There's a couple points there's 2 points in the episode where they come in. The first time I get it makes sense, because they got to do their entrance where they all walk in like there's some boy band, and they've got like the heavy metal music, and there's slow-mo, and there's this ethereal light around them. Like, okay, I get it. They're supposed to be these dreamy guys. But they do it again. They do it again in the same episode. like, I guess stretching the runtime. I'm like, we only need it once. So there's this weird thing where we're kind of almost making these guys look like they're ideal potential love interests or something, but they're like they're villains. Like, they're terrible, terrible people. They have this horrible influence on the school. Like, it's weird. I know they're probably further on. I'm guessing the characters will develop, and there's kind of like the different potential suitors, I guess. Although based on the first episode, I would feel like the main guy seems pretty terrible. Like, he does some really mean things to people. I mean, beyond mean. He basically almost gets people killed, which she points out. And then there's this like quiet, sensitive violin playing guy who does seem much better than the rest of them. But then why is he hanging out with them? I guess because they're the richest people, so he's expected to. But, even though he seems like the best person, by association, these are your friends and you're allowing them to do this stuff. So he's not really that great, but I guess he's supposed to be the one that maybe she'll end up with. I see the poster. She's got her arms around two of the other guys' arms, implying they'll be the main two people she's interested in. The other two guys, I guess, are just there for comic relief or whatever. They kind of blended together. I didn't really think they stood out as characters that much. So yeah, I don't know. I think the laundromat girl, she was the main character. She was probably the best thing about it. I thought that she was somebody who kind of stood her ground on her principles, and there's some interesting ideas about class conflict in there somewhere. And I thought that the whole over-the-top element of it, especially with that intro of, like, the hold that these people have over the school, and it's almost like part of an evil company. Like, I will admit, it had me hooked. And basically they say that she's going to get attacked by these people, kind of like the guy in the first episode was, because she gets marked, right, to be taken down as well by the F4. So, I will admit I was intrigued because I do care about that character. But there are a couple like little technical things that I kind of wish the show did a little differently that I think hurt it. Like I said, it is a bit over the top, and there are some logical things that I think kind of make it a little jarring at points, and thematically you're not exactly sure immediately how you're supposed to feel about these guys. So I think that it's kind of questionable what, like, morally, ethically, what we're supposed to do. So I'm not sure what people would get out of it other than it being kind of an over-the-top soap opera, which is fine. But I can kind of get behind that. But I was just like, there's a lot of like incredible jump cuts. Like, there's a scene and then we're in another scene. And sometimes I thought, wait, is this an accident? Because this episode did not believe in transitions. Like, it was just like, sometimes I felt like I was in the middle of the next scene. So pacing wise, there were some issues with that. And it seemed kind of very low budget, and maybe it's the resolution I was watching it at. Like, the camera work was kind of lo-fi, which I actually didn't mind. I kind of liked the fact that it was lower budget, but I thought that was kind of interesting. So there's some technical things about it that kind of brought it down a little, some logical things. And like I said, I think thematically, there's not a lot I'm exactly sure we're supposed to go for, what we're supposed to get out of it right away. Most of the characters, unfortunately, are kind of unlikable. They had their mean girls, like, and you do kind of root for the main character as an underdog. Like, you do like her. I think that's one of the main things. And I am kind of curious to see kind of how she gets back at these guys, or I guess more likely gets through to them by changing their hearts. Though it's like, I just hope she wouldn't end up with some of these people based on the first episode. Maybe that's the point, but it's so over the top. I don't know. It's not what I expected. I was kind of glad that there was more intrigue and more, I don't know, more of something a little akin to, I don't know, high octane action or something. Like, there was more intrigue going on than it just being a plain romance. Because I don't know if that would necessarily been my thing, but I was interested because I guess this one was very important in making Korean media and dramas and shows more popular across the world. So I found that interesting. I guess I could see maybe younger viewers kind of getting something out of the drama, but I don't think it's like the best written show from what I've seen in the first episode. Like I said, I did notice doing some research, though, the ratings do go up more as it goes along. So it might be an example of I'd have to watch more episodes and maybe it does get better. Because certainly viewership wise, it went up during its initial run. And I have seen bits and pieces, like a couple episodes here and there, actually, of K dramas. And I remember like seeing some that were straight romance that I thought that were a little more believable. Like there was drama, but it was more restrained. It wasn't quite as cartoony. So maybe it's because it's aimed at a younger audience. I remember seeing one that was just like about it was kind of just a straight detective story cop show where they were going after the serial killer. And I saw a weird sci-fi one that had something to do with time travel and like this guy getting a message from the future. I'll have to ask around about them. I've seen a couple that were more like serious, well-produced shows. So I feel like this show is more like maybe what people generally think of as a K-drama. But I know it's kind of like saying anime is one thing. There's a lot of different types of genres and styles and levels of quality. So they're kind of all over the place. Overall, I thought it was entertaining. Pretty over the top. I was a bit intrigued to watch the second episode, so I'll say that. They do something pretty dramatic at the end. The freeze frame, though, I wish they had cut a little sooner because it kind of made me laugh. I was like, why aren't you cutting away to what happens next time? So who knows? I guess if you've seen this show before, let me know if it does get better. Maybe you can explain more about why it's so popular. But yeah, Boys Over Flowers. There you go.